What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 7 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games' weekly podcast all about Valve's hot new handheld, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
I gotta come up with a nickname for you, because I feel like you're quickly becoming, like, you're like the ultimate Steam Deck machinist. You know, you're out here like figuring out, you know, all the bits and blobs, all the beeps and boops, all the deep cuts. You're figuring it out, Steve.
I feel like any developer, if it's something that benefits them, they'll put the effort in and figure it out. So, you know, the stuff that I've been playing with Chiaki, which you can see about over on my Twitter, and we'll talk about in more detail in a couple of weeks. And there's a tutorial coming out Monday, Tuesday next week on the channel.
There's also a tutorial you already put out. If you haven't seen it, we had a brand new tutorial go live on the YouTube channel this week, where Steve showed off how to get Greenlight working, which is the program that will allow you to stream your Xbox games directly to your Steam Deck. So if you want to figure out how to play your Xbox library on your Steam Deck relatively seamlessly over your local internet, definitely go check that out. And we're gonna
that was definitely a more seamless process than getting Chiaki set up. And
seems like
hopefully the little thing I've built will make it more seamless for a lot of people. But that'll be revealed in the video on Monday, unless you're a patron and then you have access to it already.
Yeah, and so just to give you guys an idea of like our timeline here, what we're thinking right now is next week we're going to have a very special guest on the show. A couple of weeks ago we talked about we were going to be doing the State of the Switch survey review, which is going to be a great time. We're really looking forward to that. Hopefully you already got your data in, but if not, if you're not familiar, State of the Switch is something that's being worked on by Kevin Whammer, who
is the Steam Deck.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying State of the Switch. State of the Steam Deck, which is from Overkill, WTF, which is a Steam Deck website. And it is, of course, inspired by the State of the Switch survey that friend of the show, Chris Brandrick, famously does every year. And he comes on Nintendo Noise, our Nintendo podcast, every year to talk all about the data. So we are going to have a similar episode next week where we'll dive into the State of the Steam Deck survey. And get into kind of a lot of interesting data points just about the user base, how people use their Steam Deck. Should be a really fascinating episode. And then provided that Valve doesn't drop any major bombs on us the week after that, so not next week's show, but the following week's show should be the one where we talk all about Greenlight and Chiaki and our kind of like experience with trying to get it work and how is it actually for practically trying to play these games on the go and use it in the use case that, you know, we've imagined. So make sure you keep it tuned. The next 2 weeks episodes are going to be a blast, but we've also got a great episode for you here on this week's show. We got follow-ups from some of our content from last week. We've got a great question in the question block and an update on the Steam Deck Steam Dock. So a jam-packed show for you this week and the next 2 weeks. But before we get into that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of September. For the last time, they are Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to find more content from us, if you want to find more ways you can get involved, if you want to become a Patreon producer and get your name read on the air or get a bunch of other cool perks and goodies, you can find links to all of those things on our website, flipscreen.games. Make sure you go check it out. However you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning in to this week's show. So let's jump into some follow-up from last week's show. That'll be our start screen this week because, of course, last week's episode we talked all about the Logitech G Cloud, the would-be Steam Deck killer that just doesn't seem quite up to snuff, and we got some great comments over on the YouTube channel that we wanted to highlight. You guys have been super active over on the YouTube channel, leaving a bunch of great comments and tuning into the show every week. So thank you so much for listening. We wanted to give you guys a highlight here.
Most of the comments were just shitting on the Logitech G Cloud and that it was like a write-off and a dud at launch. Some people pointing out that it doesn't even have Wi-Fi 6. So if you're going to be streaming and it's like a streaming-centric device that doesn't have the latest version of Wi-Fi in there. Granted, I don't think the Steam Deck does, but that's not the purpose.
That's not the point, right? Like, device, it's not a streaming-only device.
Yeah. So I'll skip all of those, but if you want to go and have a read through last week's episode, there's a bunch like that. I did want to highlight a few though. Chris Brandrick and Captain Kickoff both addressed your queue skipping behavior. Chris called you Pete Schofield over here trying to jump the queue, which is what I said last week, right? Phil and Holly jump in the queue to get all your consoles.
Chris,
and
you got to do what you got to do. All right. And and look, and I'll tell you this, Chris, you're a friend. We're all friends here. When you need to jump a queue, I got your back. All right. If I got the hookup, I'll pass it along. Homies help homies.
Now,
that's how we do.
I gotta say though, the queue for the Steam Deck is so short right now. My friend ordered his Steam Deck last month, and he got his email Monday.
Wow.
To buy it.
Hell of a turnaround there. That's great.
So the queue is getting shorter and shorter. So I don't think there's gonna be much of a wait for people.
Now's the time.
Get an order in now. Yeah. Yeah, because I think it's probably going to get more and more packed as we get to the holiday season.
Yeah, the back half of the year.
Get your order in now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Captain Kickoff said, my girlfriend went to Smith's toy store and there was a huge queue for the Xbox Series X. She convinced the guy that she had reserved one, even though you couldn't reserve it, and got it on release day. She played a blinder.
Yo, that rules. Shout out to Captain Kickoff's girlfriend. That is badass, dude. I'll tell you what, if I've learned anything when it comes to that kind of thing, act like you belong. That can get you a long way. Be like, hey, like I did this. I talked to somebody. I don't know. Like, say sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. Like, fucking hey, roll the dice. Especially if you're out here trying to get yourself a next gen console on launch day. There's no room for playing by the rules. All right, you got to fucking get it however you get it. All right, and she did it.
I had such a hassle with Smiths because I wanted to get mine through Xbox All Access, which I ended up doing in the end through Game. But Smiths was such a pain in the ass. Like they said, oh no, we're not doing it instantly. You have to do it online. The website was completely broken and the Twitter account was saying you need to go to the store to do it. And it was just full of miscommunication. That shop is a disaster. I don't know how they survive. But the last comment we had was from The Purpose of Time, which I think is very timely for today's recording. And they said Stadia has the best cloud service, ironically. It's silky smooth and super crisp on small screens. And I just want to pour one out for Stadia.
My condolences to The Purpose of Time. I think one of the 5 people actually using Stadia, and now you're missing out on it. That's such a shame. I really feel for you. That sucks.
Yeah, and I know Wakahula, one of our Patreon producers, has also spoken in Discord about how he thinks it's the best cloud tech, and by far like the best when you compare it to say Xbox or GeForce Now or Amazon's little thing, whatever they call that.
Luna, right?
Luna, Amazon Luna. So when you compare it to all of those, it was the best, but it had this weird service around it, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, over on the Flip Screen Games podcast this week if you want to hear our eulogies for Stadia.
Yeah, we'll have to we'll have to talk all about that one. Yeah, it's an interesting one, but pour one out for Stadia and for all you folks who were using it. But don't forget, they are giving refunds. So if you did invest,
and not just on software. I didn't realize it was on hardware as well. So if you bought one of the packs that had the Chromecast Ultra and the controller, you've got yourself a really nice controller, because those controllers are great and they work just as a Bluetooth controller, and a Chromecast for nothing. It was like you rented all of this stuff for 3 years and now they don't want it back.
Kind of wish I had done it, right? Like, it's shit. I was thinking about how I wanted to get a Chromecast for when I'm on the road now, like just to plug it into TVs and stuff. And it's like, hey, would have been good.
I do the same with I've got a Roku stick that whenever we go anywhere, I plug it in.
Same principle. But so condolences to those of you affected, but make sure you go get your refund. And then we wanted to give a quick update as well. Last week we talked about the Steam Deck queue getting advanced and how there were some issues with supplies in Canada. Valve has issued an update on this from the official On Deck Steam Deck account, I should say. And they said, quick note for our Canadian friends, we've resumed sending order emails to reservers in this region. Thank you for your patience. So Great to see that they were able to get that resolved quickly, as we figured they would last week, because they've been very efficient about this kind of thing, and great to see them be super transparent and already have it resolved. So if you're a Canadian listener and you've been waiting, hopefully you'll be getting your email soon. Keep your eyes open. All right, so let's jump into the question block. We got a question here from a member of the community, Navalis, who wrote in and said, do you both buy games just from the Steam store, or do you ever use another place like Humble Bundle? If so, what other places would you recommend? Thank you in advance, and keep up the amazing work. So you've done this quite a bit, Steve.
I have, yeah. So I think there's two kind of ways you can kind of interpret this question. I think the way Navalis is talking about it is codes, right? You're going to get a Steam code from Humble or one of these other websites and import it as an actual Steam game. Or there is installing from Epic Game Store, GOG,
right, from a different launcher.
Ubisoft, from a different launcher. I've done both of those things, but I will say I've never really used Humble. I was considering jumping on that 2K bundle that they had, but I think I missed out on that one, unfortunately. And I probably will jump at some point on a Humble bundle.
I can speak to that. Even as somebody who's like casual in the PC market, I've pretty much always been a supporter of the Humble bundle. Tough, I'm the type who struggles to walk away from a good deal. So there was a point where I was buying Humble bundles left and right, especially if they're connected with a good cause. So, from my experience, and I will say, like, for context, I think the last time I bought a Humble Bundle was a couple years ago, and maybe prior to their acquisition. But to speak just broadly about my experience using Humble Bundle, it's always been positive. It's very simple. You buy the Humble Bundle, they send you a link to a cart basically where you can claim all your codes, and you just go and dump them right in Steam, and they work like any other Steam game. So when it comes to Humble, I would say, like, if you're the type of person who only wants to use one launcher and you don't want to mess around with having to, have the Epic launcher on your Steam Deck and having to go through the trouble of like manually updating games and everything like that, Humble Bundle is definitely the way to go. It's probably the best third-party way to buy a Steam code in my experience anyway.
Yeah, so you can get both the bundles, but they do also sell just individual games as well now there, so you can, like, it's worth comparing prices because sometimes they are a little bit more expensive than Steam, sometimes they're a little bit cheaper. There's a couple of other websites I've used. My favorite one is cdkeys.com. It uses this kind of, the way the codes are cheap is they buy them in a different currency, so then they can sell them at a different price. So it's kind of that ethical gray area as to whether you agree with that or not. But I kind of feel like I'm getting a good deal. Someone's paid for the game up front, and I'm buying it from a reseller. And they were the place that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago where they had Spider-Man down to like $40 like at launch. So you already could get a tenner off it, which was insane. Another one of the websites I've used is Green Man Gaming. And they
I've used them too, actually.
Publishers.
They're good too.
Yeah, Green Man Gaming's great. They'll give you Steam keys as well. Sometimes you have to be careful because you will get like a key for a different launcher, because some games, like Ubisoft's games, for example, aren't on Steam, annoyingly, so you won't get a code for those.
You need to make sure you know what you're getting into with that one, right? Like, be aware that the game is on Steam. Make sure you're getting a Steam code. But
yeah,
similarly, it can often be a good place to snag at least a minor deal.
Yeah, I found that Green Man Gaming and CD Keys have both been really solid. I've never had a code from either of them that hasn't worked, and it's been perfect. I've had no issues with either, and I would recommend checking both of those out if you're looking for a deal, because they always have sales on. Like, every site's got a different sale on at a different time, even if Steam hasn't got one on. And if you're using a different launcher on Steam Deck in particular, check out the Heroic launcher. It's the best one, and it will let you install from Epic and GOG.
I think you should do a tutorial.
I will do a video on it at some point. Yeah, that combined with Boiler to get it into Steam. But
the only thing that sucks about that is you have
an extra hassle.
Yeah, because you've explained this on a previous episode, but yeah, you have to manually open that in desktop mode to go and like update those games and everything. And if it's a single player game that's not getting a ton of updates, that's fine. But like, I know you had that experience with Fall Guys where it was like kind of a hassle to get it running, and then you got to go manually update it all the time, and it's not an optimal experience.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Whereas, with Fall Guys, because it was on Steam and it got delisted, you can go to somewhere like CD Keys and you can buy a code for Steam if you want to. It costs you money. I think they're going for $11.99 at the moment. But if you are constantly playing Fall Guys all the time and you really want to have the best experience on your Steam Deck, that's probably the route to go. Is go pay 12 quid and download it from within Steam rather than getting it from the Epic Games Store. However, it's really hard to turn down those free games that Epic give away every month, and I've downloaded a couple of those, so it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I think that ultimately comes down to like how much effort are you willing to put in to like save money and have a non-native experience. It works and it's definitely doable. I think it's just a matter of like how much is that something that you're willing to put time into? Because I know there are a lot of folks that just don't want to be bothered, right? And they want to use one launcher and like they want to just go through the Steam store, and that's reasonable. I think outside of that, the only other thing I would recommend is, and this isn't exactly the same thing, right? Because it's not a storefront, it's not keys or whatever, but the other way I think to play non-native games that works really well is, of course, EmuDeck, which we've talked about a lot. Yeah. And if you're not familiar, definitely emudeck.com. Go check that one out. Community-sourced emulation station, basically. It opens up and installs pretty much damn near every emulator that you could think of. The only ones you need to do any specific work with are for like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, Switch, and Wii U. Everything else kind of just works right out the box. So if you are interested in playing like some retro stuff or stuff that, isn't available on PC right now, or the best version isn't available on PC, that's another thing that's worth considering. And that works like a native experience once you set it up properly and use the Steam ROM manager. All those things will launch directly from your Steam account. You can save natively and all that stuff, and it works like a charm. So that's another one I would definitely consider if any games you're interested in fall under that umbrella.
Yeah, EmuDeck's actually had an update recently. So even the Wii U emulator requires no configuration. Before you had to download the exe manually and then set it to be in the Proton compatibility layer. Does all that for you now. So you can either go through the basic install, which will install all of the emulators, or you can go through the advanced install and just say, no, I'm not interested in any of these systems, because there are some systems that I probably would untick. Like really old ones like NES, I don't care about. But some newer ones like
really old
Wii
ones like
stuff.
NES. This thing replicates like the Atari 2600, and he's like, old
yeah, anything
like
from
NES.
pre PS1, I'm just not interested in playing on the
Did you really
Steam
just
Deck.
say that? Anything? Not even Super Nintendo?
No, I don't want to play it on the Steam Deck. I feel like I would play that on my Switch just because it's lighter. I don't need to play those games on my Steam Deck.
Get out of here. What about all the classics that aren't on there? Your Chrono Triggers, your Final Fantasy VIs.
That is true, yeah. But, I've heard the PC port of Chrono Trigger is just impeccable with a really great font, so everyone should
Apparently
play
they fixed
version,
it.
Yeah.
Apparently they did fix it. I had a friend who just got a Steam Deck, and they were like, oh, I bought Chrono Trigger on Steam, and I was like, you should not. And then they were like, oh, I looked it up. Apparently they fixed a bunch of the problems. And I'm like, all right, there you go. But
okay, well, that's good. That's good. And at least they're supporting the developers.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's another one I would check out if you haven't already. I don't know that we'll have time to talk about this anytime soon, but at some point I'd like to talk about it. I'm currently doing a run through of I'm playing my first serious Pokemon ROM hack on my Steam Deck. I just got Pokemon Radical Red.
So it's a Nuzlocke you're playing, right?
I'm not doing a Nuzlocke, but this game is hard as fuck.
They're basically the same. Nuzlocke and ROM.
They are basically the same, right? But dude, this game is hard as fuck. Like, I put 3 hours in and I have not even got past the first badge yet, and I was like, I love this. I fucking love this.
Let's talk about that over on Nintendo Noise. I feel
Sticking
like that'd
its
be a cool
boot
topic
on my neck. It's awesome.
That'd be a cool topic to talk about with Sierra, or if we get AJ on.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk more about that over there. But that's one of the main ways I like to use my Steam Deck. It's just a phenomenal emulation station. When you're not using it for indies or whatever. Thanks for writing, Nevelis. Let's jump in to our talking point for the week. We got an update on the Steam Dock. Lawrence Yang and Eric Peterson had an interview over at IGN that was all about kind of talking about, I mean, a lot of things, honestly, frankly. It was a good interview with Kat Bailey over at IGN, and they talked about kind of like everything from like Windows running on Steam Deck. They talked about the idea of like a smaller Steam Deck. A lot of really interesting stuff. But of course, the main thing we wanted to touch on here was the update around the Steam Dock. So Lawrence Yang, who we've referenced multiple times on this show, he's one of the, kind of the brains behind the Steam Deck. Again, right? Valve and their whole flat structure. It's very, I don't know if he's like the boss of the Steam Deck, but he certainly seems, you always hear him talking, right? Like he's a real face of the device for sure. So he came out and said a lot of the same supply chain issues that we ran into with the Steam Deck. The deck is actually in a much better spot now. We're able to produce them at a much faster clip. The dock is being manufactured at a different place. It has different components, and it has its own supply issues and constraints that we've had to deal with. We're overcoming them, and so we are going to hopefully announce something soon, so watch out for that. There's a lot of great stuff that we wanted to do to make sure that it works with as many peripherals as possible. What's great is any work that we do for the Steam Deck dock works on every dock, so every USB dock is benefiting from all the work that we do on Steam OS.
And we spoke about this, right, as to maybe one of the reasons why the dock wasn't out is because they want to make sure the dock experience is perfect and right. And we got a big update in the beta channel this week as well that added a bunch of stuff related to docked mode. So I tested it out, actually. It was the only reason I was able to do that tutorial, because my capture card didn't work docked previously, because my capture card only supports 16:9 resolutions, and by default the Steam Deck would output 16:10. So they've now added in an external resolution output and refresh rate in the display settings. So you can just select, I want this to output at 1080p, 720p, or whatever resolution you want, all the way up to 4K. You can do like 4K 30 by default. Like that's the max it'll do. They've also, related to the docked mode, they fixed aspect ratio and resolution not properly switching after you came back to Steam Deck after you were on an external monitor, and fixed an issue where frames would drop on external displays at lower refresh rates. There's also another really weird one in here that I want to talk about in a minute, which is fixed boot tone volume to be equalized across models. And I don't know what they mean by across models, because as far as I'm aware, they only have one Steam Deck model, unless the tone was different between 64, 128, and
That's what I was going to
512.
say. I wonder if it's the experience wasn't uniform across the models because the one doesn't have an SSD.
Quite possibly, yeah. One's at eMMC instead of NVMe, so possibly.
Just and
Or
maybe
it's
just
the
making an
screen.
adjustment so that the experience is seamless between
Yeah.
them and you can't notice a difference between the two. That doesn't seem crazy to me.
Yeah, really weird one.
Yeah, interesting for sure. But yeah, I mean, you made a point that it sounds like we're gonna get an update about this, I think, in the next couple weeks. Given the way they talk about things, to be like, it's coming soon. To me, when they say soon, they usually mean in like the next 8 weeks. And like that's pretty true.
I would imagine, end of October at the latest, we have like a release date for it. And I kind of hope it's this side of Christmas, because I would really like to get an order in for one.
It would be nice.
Having said that, my little Amazon dongle does the job, does wonders, and it sounds like all of the stuff all the work they're doing for the Steam Deck dock will also translate and work with my little dongle. But I just want somewhere nice and official to plant my Steam Deck when I stream or when I want to plug it into the TV and play some games. And I feel like it would be just such a nice streamlined experience. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm glad they're talking about it again, because it showed up at TGS. They didn't really acknowledge it, and then this interview on IGN, it's we know something's coming.
So while we're on the subject of the interview, because I do want to talk about it a little bit more. Do you have other things to say about Steam Dock?
No, I'm just
I'm just excited to get my hands on
what else is what else is there to say, really? I mean, we spoke about it till we were blue in the face like 2 episodes ago. Just where the hell is this thing? The resolution stuff they added in the beta works a treat. Like I said, it means my capture card works again. Although weirdly the audio doesn't get captured in desktop mode, only in game mode. I don't know why. It's really strange. But it does the job. So I'm very happy.
So I thought this was a great interview. There was a lot of cool tidbits about it. Like you mentioned TGS. This interview took place in Japan, and they talked a little bit about kind of the reaction to it at TGS, which I thought was pretty interesting. They said they've had like a lot of really positive interactions with folks, and the main thing that people identified being surprised about was the weight, actually, which I thought was interesting, because I think we also had that experience. Like when you get your hands on it the first time, you have this perception that it's going to be this big bulky thing, and it kind of is, but it really does feel good in the hands. It's extremely ergonomic, and
it's the distribution. Like it pushes it out to the sides, and it's like it feels good in your hands. It doesn't feel like it's weighing you down. Now, granted, it's, I go back to my Switch and I'm like, holy shit, yeah, this thing's a lot lighter. I forgot how light this
like
was
a lot
in
lighter.
comparison. Yeah. But they spoke about like a slimmer Steam Deck as well.
Yeah, and why it wasn't
and how
quite a
it's like,
possibility.
it's not really feasible because the battery life would be too low. And we've seen that with like the Ioneo Air. To get anywhere near that 15-watt power draw that the Steam Deck does at peak levels, there's just no way. You need that big battery, and if you see a teardown, it takes up the majority of the space in that case, and that's the reason that thing is so big.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you start getting like down to it, and they talk about like one of the concerns they had going into it was that they really didn't want it to be underpowered, right? And they want it to be able to handle some of those bigger like AAA experiences. And from what we've seen, they do work surprisingly well. Like one of the things they talked about in the Japanese market, right, was that like people were impressed that you could just boot up Elden Ring on it and things like that, and that was one of the things that people pointed to of being like, I really thought it was going to seem underpowered and that it would struggle with some of these games, and it's certainly not a perfect experience, right? But
I actually think Elden Ring is probably the best experience you'll get on through Proton. From what I know about it, it stutters like hell on Windows, but running it through Proton, it smooths all those judders out.
Yeah, like this is one of the quotes. This is from Eric Peterson. He said, I would say that certainly I agree with what Lauren said. And he was kind of talking about like the power and what people expect and all that kind of stuff, the stuff we were just summarizing. And he says, but there's a lot of customers that we've heard from who were just blown away by the fact it can run those AAA games the way that they can and still have it be a portable device that you can take with you and play. It may be just a different perspective, but it's kind of mind-bending to me actually sometimes that I can just play Elden Ring in my hands on the couch. Which, yeah, I mean, hell, I think that was the right call, right?
They spoke a bit about as well as to like how they anticipated people using it, right? That it was going to be this portable device, and they'll take it on buses and things, but that most people found that they just wanted to sit on the couch and not be at their same space and the same desk that they game at all day, like they work at all day long through this remote work, and then play games there,
like me,
which is like the same situation you've spoken about so many times.
I am the target Steam Deck user. Yeah, and and he kind of gave an example, right? He said in my case, and this is Eric again. He says in my case, when I play it when my wife's maybe watching TV and I'm hanging out on the couch with her and playing a game, or maybe I put it down for a second and make some dinner and then come back and grab it. And then Lawrence added, I'm a dad. I have 2 young kids, and it used to be that I'd have to guiltily hide in my office and play games in the dark. But now I can actually play a game, and I hear my son crying. I can run over, change his diaper, and then finish, and then play my game again while they're watching Sesame Street or whatever. It's been great. Very, very vivid example. But again, right, I think it speaks to the kind of unique use case of the Steam Deck, because it's handheld. You think of it as this portable device, but its battery life isn't very good, right? Like it's honestly not the best.
I actually think his battery life is fine.
Depends on what you're playing.
It really depends on what you're playing. But if you're playing a AAA game, I think it's on par with what I was getting playing Breath of the Wild at like full brightness.
Sure.
It's like it's no different, I think, than the Switch. With the Switch's battery life, which is
Yeah,
like you're playing these big, heavy games. You're probably going to get an
you want
hour
to
and a
play it at
half,
home.
maybe 2 hours. You want to play something like Stardew Valley, you're probably, if you turn the TDP down to like 5, you could probably get like 4 or 5 hours out
Yeah,
of this thing. And I think that's phenomenal. I
totally,
really do.
totally
But
reasonable, totally reasonable. But I think it
I'm not
speaks
gonna.
to
You're not gonna. For me, I'm not gonna take this anywhere. It's a thing I use in at home, maybe in an office if I worked in an office. I don't think I would ever pull this out while I'm commuting or anything.
and I think that's the
But
thing
I
is
know we've spoken about
I
that,
take it
and you
with
might.
I take it with me places, right? Like, but I don't think I think that would be the use case I wouldn't really get a lot out of. Is like if it was like a commute kind of thing because it is so big and it would be a lot to carry it with you, you know. But it's like I don't know, like if you worked in an office, how long is your commute if you're on a train, right? Like even if you have an hour and a half commute, you could reasonably play it on the way there, charge it up while you're at work, and play it on the way home. Like
Yeah.
it fits that use case well enough. But I also think like I don't know, right? Like think about how much like the way society has changed the last couple of years and like how many people work from home now or like just aren't commuting into an office as much, and I bet you that's influenced it as well. Like if this came out in an earlier time period, it might not be so in that camp of people just being like, oh, I just kind of use it as a portable PC when I'm at home and I want to enjoy PC gaming somewhere that's not glued
Quite
to my desk.
possibly, because you might want to come home and like play games how you used to, right? You come home, it's just like, oh, I'll make some dinner and I'll go play games for a couple of hours. And I think that works great. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably how they still play. But I very much am in the same use case as Eric, where I'll be on the sofa while my partner's watching TV, and we're sort of doing that thing where we're in the same room and we're hanging out, but we're doing two independent things.
Sure.
But we'll still chat occasionally, and like I'll still look up at the TV and be like, "Oh, what's happening there?" But I'm really like engaged in the game I'm playing, and I love that use case. And being able to play like big AAA games on it has been nice. I know that's not really the kind of thing that you want to play on it, but
Works for
being
me
able
though.
to do that even through remote play has been great. And I really think you would benefit a lot from that when we talk about that in a couple of
I am
weeks.
very excited. Yeah, I'm in the process of replaying Spider-Man Remastered. I just beat the main campaign, and now I'm like kind of chipping away at the DLC. But I am kind of getting to the point where I wanna shift my attention a little bit, and play other stuff on the TV. So I think that might be a fun way to like keep chipping away at that on my Steam Deck. So yeah, I'm very excited to try to get into that and see how that works for me. But I think that's like really what is so special about the Steam Deck is like it is such a versatile device. I'm not surprised to hear that people are using it in ways that they didn't expect. And that's I think the thing I'm so excited about for the state of the Steam Deck conversation next week is like to look at more of that raw data and see like how are people using it in ways that are unexpected, or like ways that are way different than the way that you or I are using it. And I think it's interesting because I mean shit, even just among this panel, right? Like we have two very different use cases for what we get out of it and how often we play it and what we're playing on it and stuff like that, because for both of us it's one of if not our primary gaming device week to week, and we're playing totally different stuff on it.
It's probably how I play most of my games these days, just because the TV is used up when I'm like wanting to play games. Like I finish work, it's the same time my partner comes home from work. I'm not exactly going to be like, no, you can't use the TV that has the Xbox and the PlayStation hooked up to because I want to sit here and play games for 2 hours.
You gotta get Macaulay
So
a
being
Steam
able
Deck.
to
You can
yeah, maybe,
trade
but
off.
then we share. The problem I have with that is we share a Steam account, so it's not really going to work out. So they'd have to get their own Steam account, and then I'm sure they'd be very sad about losing a lot of the games that they have on my account. Um, that's one thing I will talk about at some point on the podcast as well, is the process of. I don't know if you've experienced what happens when someone uses Steam while you're playing it on the Steam
No.
Deck.
Wait a minute. Couldn't they just make an account and you can share your library with them?
Yeah, but you can't use the library while someone else is using the Steam Deck. So you can't share, like you can't play games from the same library.
At the same time.
Yeah.
That sucks.
It does suck.
Fair, but that's a bummer. Totally reasonable. So another thing they talked about I thought was interesting, and this is something that you had said you were going to try, and you found that it was too much of a hassle to be worth it, was the idea of loading Windows on it and being able to use that as like a dual boot so that you could get around some of the, like limitations of the Linux-based platform, like ideally perhaps using like Xbox Game Pass on the Steam Deck and things like that.
So they've spoken a lot about this since launch, right? And they reiterate the same thing in this interview, that it's coming when SteamOS gets a installer, and then you'll be able to install Windows through that. You can already dual boot Windows from an SD card. You do what's called a Windows to Go install, so it will install Windows directly onto the SD card. You go into the boot manager, and you hold down power and the volume up key when you boot it up, and then you can boot into Windows if you want to. My God, it's a lot of hassle, and it's not a great experience from what I can tell. So I'm pushing and kicking that can down the road, because I kind of feel that with Greenlight, you get so close to Game Pass running natively that for me, I'm okay with 90% of the way there.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's worth the trouble right now, especially when you know that there's an official solution coming. And Lawrence has basically said what you said, right? Once the installer drops, the ability to dual boot Windows will come alongside that. So probably imminent as well, right? I would imagine that's a next 6 months type of thing. So
I would hope so. SteamOS 3 they've been working on for a very long time now, and they've been promising this installer for a long time too. And I know a lot of people would like to run this on their actual machine as well, because SteamOS offers, through Proton, plays a lot of games really performant and in some ways better than running natively on Windows. And I would imagine a lot of Linux players or a lot of Linux PC users want to try SteamOS as a gaming-centric flavor of Linux, and it'll be nice to have that installer so people can start installing it on different devices.
There was one other thing I wanted to touch on. I forgot to bring this up during the initial part of the deck conversation, but there was a question here from Kat that was about that experience and like about like trying to run some of the AAA stuff and how it kind of struggled. And here we go. Kat said, I know that from my own perspective, when I tried to plug it into a television, I was surprised that a lot of games really struggled to be able to run smoothly on it. It was upscaling automatically to 4K and that kind of thing. I'm just wondering, what steps are you taking to enhance the connectivity to a television screen? And Lauren said, yeah, that's some of the software work that I alluded to that's related to the dock work. A lot of the work that we're doing is to make sure that we can cover as many peripherals, displays, monitors, and whatever to make sure that the thing you want to actually happen will actually happen when you plug it in, and that it'll be a good experience. I don't know when the last time you tried that was, but I think we've actually improved that already. So you might want to go try it again to see how that goes. Which is great because, again, right, like I love the idea that that's something that they're thinking of, and that like some of that functionality that we were banging the drum about a couple of weeks ago, they're on the same page, right, which is exciting.
Yeah, I still feel like they've got an uphill battle to have multiple configurations for both docked mode and portable mode, because by default it's running in an 800p mode when it's portable, but when you dock it, you might want to run it in 1080p and drop down to 30 frames per second instead of if you're running it at 40 frames per second. And I'd love to have the ability to have different profiles that would allow me to do that. But whether that's something that's on the cards or not, I don't know, because there's going to be a lot of work to do there, because I don't know how you do that when a lot of the games require you to configure like the resolution and the settings and everything within the game. It's kind of like you set it and forget it within the game of like, oh, I'm running this at 720p kind of thing. But we'll have to wait and see. I'd imagine if anyone can figure it out, it's Valve. I have a lot of faith in them at this point.
Well, and the nice thing is, too, this kind of ties into the next thing I wanted to touch on. Kat asked a question about the community orientation of the Steam Deck, right? Kat said, obviously this is a very community-focused machine. Is there one specific mod or improvement that the community has made that really made you as designers go, wow, that's awesome? that was really incredible work by the community. And Lawrence said, well, for one, the community is amazing. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff, things we wouldn't imagine. There are YouTubers who are putting actual PC heat sinks into the thing. It's crazy and it's cool because it is a PC and you should be able to do what you want with it. And we're really cool with that. As far as other mods, we've seen a lot of people building plugins for it, and we're looking to see how people are using those and what people are asking for and what they want. It's kind of a fine balance. Adding more knobs and dials is cool for the people that want them, but if you have too many knobs and dials, then you can intimidate people who really don't want to mess with the Steam Deck. We just have to find a way to appeal to both crowds and make sure that everyone can have a good experience. And I love that. I love that, again, the idea that, like, they're actively looking at what the community is doing and like, trying to take inspiration from that rather than limit it. And I think it speaks to the difference between, and we make this comparison so often, right, between this and, like, what Nintendo does with the Switch. And, you know, all the console manufacturers have this kind of mentality of, like, it's this walled garden, right? They don't want you to bust it open. They don't want you to hack it. You're violating your, you know, your, what's the word I'm looking for, Steve?
Warranty?
Yeah, you're violating your warranty by busting it open, all that kind of stuff, right? And Valve has this total like, hey, you should do whatever you want with it, right? Use it how you want to use it. That's awesome, right? That's cool. But I think, again, looking at what homebrew stuff people are making and then being like, okay, how do we make this official? How do we, you know, give people what they're having to put the work in to figure out, the way that you are with all these cool, you know, figuring out streaming and figuring out dual booting Windows and all that kind of stuff, right? And they're like,
And I love that that's possible without having to, like, jailbreak the device and sideloading some software on, you know. Everyone's wanting to do this. It feels like since the PSP, we've all wanted a device that can run games natively from a store and do what we want to do with it, but also have the freedom and the flexibility to do all this other stuff. And it feels like the main platform owners have always been scared by piracy, and that it would open up piracy and people wouldn't buy games. But piracy's been possible on PCs, like, forever, and yet people still buy games.
I think Valve are also confident. I mean, that's part of the Steam model, right? Is that, like, there's always a sale going on. The games are so fucking affordable, and, like...
And it's so easy to use, so why would you want to go through the hassle of going and finding, like, cracks and this, that, and the other to get it working when you can just pay and download it and it works? And if it doesn't work, you can refund it.
And right, exactly. And that's the thing, right? Is I think that Valve has done a really good job of positioning themselves in the way that, like, you know, like Netflix did in the early days of streaming, right? Like, that was a huge blow to piracy online of you know, TV shows and movies and stuff like that. There was a whole cottage community of websites of, like, every time an episode of a TV show goes up, we're uploading it and everybody's downloading it. And, like, that was a huge thing when I was younger of, like, if you wanted to keep up with stuff or if you wanted to find old retro shows that weren't on TV anymore. And, like, but that was a fucking hassle. It was a lot of work. And the ability to just be like, oh, it's $5 a month for Netflix. And now I'm indoctrinated. So it's 15 and I'm like, whatever. Like, you know, like, that's how they get you. And, like, that's what Valve has done, right? The deals are there. You have the ability to return it if you don't like the game, and as long as you haven't played too much of it. They've made it so easy that it's like, why would you bother? Why would you bother with piracy, you know? Unless it's really the only option for you, I guess, you know?
Yeah, which in some cases it is, you know, and same with other mediums. You know, we've seen that with the fucking Warner Discovery stuff this week, that piracy is going to be the only way for some stuff.
And that's why we are not anti-emulation, right? Like, it's like there's a fine line between piracy and games preservation when it comes to old video games.
Yeah.
But I think we both obviously agree that, like, when you're talking about something that's new or readily available on a storefront, you should do the right thing and pay for it, right?
Like, it's, if I could play Wind Waker HD on my Switch, which I should have been able to by now,
but they outright refuse to put it out, right?
That,
so, like,
it's like, I'm gonna play it. I want to play that game, and, you know, I've bought Wind Waker before, and I don't feel guilty about it.
I still own the Wii U copy. I don't feel guilty if I want to do that. I paid money for it. I bought a Wii U. You owe me. Like,
yeah. But yeah, I you know, I going back to the kind of plugins and the community stuff. The plugins specifically is something it's not really a rabbit hole I've gone down yet, but I love the idea that they're looking at what people are using, and there's one in particular that I wish they will like pull in from Power Tools. There's this plugin called Power Tools, which will add additional switches to the performance menu, essentially. And one in particular makes Dolphin run so smoothly,
Nice.
which is the Wii and GameCube emulator. It lets you turn off cores for the CPU. So by
Really?
default, it will spread its load over all of the cores, but then it runs at too low of a clock speed. And a lot of the GameCube games were timed to the clock speed of the
Right.
GPU. And so if you turn off some of the cores, it'll run at the correct clock speed, and then the game will be more performant, which seems really counterintuitive, but it works.
It's
And
really weird.
it's one of those things you have to remember to go in and out, turn off. Whereas if I could have it only turned on for Dolphin in that, per game
Right.
configuration profile thing that they have, where I can say only run this with 2 cores instead of 8 or 6 or 4, then it would be a much simpler and
And
smoother
I
experience.
think the exciting thing about that kind of thing is like they are thinking about it, right? And there's like that comment here that Andrew made about, or I'm sorry, that Lawrence made about wanting to be able to appeal to both of those crowds. And then they talked a little bit more about that. And again, I think it's so funny, right? Because that was kind of like when we made this show, that was like, I'm like the guy who doesn't want to tinker with shit, and you're the guy who loves tinkering with shit. And it's like, it seems like that is the audience. Like, those are the two kinds of people that have a Steam Deck, right? And like, it's cool that they recognize that and they want to encourage the folks that want to tinker and come up with the next cool thing, but then they want to find a way to implement it so that the folks like me who just want to play video games can just push a button and it'll do it for you. Like, that's amazing. That's exactly where I want their heads to be, and it's really encouraging to hear them say stuff like that. Like Eric followed up and said, the sky's the limit on that, on the kind of things you can do with it, but it's also really important to us that you're not into that, and you just want to have a device that you can just play games on and have a great time and not have to worry about updating your drivers or whatever. It does that. It should be able to do both. And like, those are the things I hate about PC gaming. And I love that the Steam Deck does it for you. And like, I'm not worrying about what friggin' drivers I have. It's just like, oh, there's an update. Cool. Update. Done. Like, that's experience I want. And I love that they're looking at the effort that folks like you are putting in and being like, all right, great. Like, how do we roll these things in? How do we make it as seamless a process? If you want to gut the thing and put coolant in it or whatever, like, cool, do your thing, bro. But like, if that's not your jam, like, great. You don't have to engage with any of that, and you can still have a great experience. And they talked about the Japanese angle on that, which is something we've talked about the last couple of weeks as well, which I thought was interesting. And I think it speaks to why the Steam Deck has a real potential to be successful over in Japan. So Lawrence said, actually, one of the reasons we're here at TGS and showing it to the folks in Japan is this is a country that is not necessarily known for PC gaming. It's actually one of the fastest growing PC gaming countries in the world, but there's still a lot of people who don't know much about it. I know for me, when I want to buy a PC or a new gaming laptop, it can be a hassle because you have to do a lot of research and try to figure out what you want to do. With the Steam Deck, it's just like a one-stop shop. You can just buy it and you can play it. It can play all the games that you want to play. That's a really good entry point into PC gaming. We hope that will be the case for folks here in Japan.
I really hope so. And to be honest, Lawrence, that's my entry point into PC gaming. I never played games on PC before this. I have 2 Macs. And now I'm considering building a PC so I can play some of these games at like higher frame rate or with a mouse and keyboard if I want to. So it kind of is like a nice gateway. I really now wish there was the next step, and I hope Steam get back to it. I know Steam machines were a big flop for them, but I kind of feel that they could do it this time with
I don't want them to,
with
though.
like
I
a
want them to
box.
just keep iterating on the Steam Deck and make the Steam Deck
I want both.
capable
Like,
of doing
because I
that.
really feel like if they had a machine that can run all the games that you're running on Steam Deck, but I can also plug my Valve Index into, and it's a machine that, like, I know I don't have to worry about, oh, does this have this driver? Does this support the Index? Can I run all of this stuff on it? And I can just go play Half-Life Alyx, and I can get like a setup, and it works, and I know it's seamless
I'll
and
tell you
great.
what, I'm coming around on that because I my immediate thought is, why don't you just make the Steam Deck be capable of that? But I recognize that because the Steam Deck is portable, there are always going to be certain levels of limitations. The idea of them basically making like a Raspberry Pi or something where it's just a super simple little cube that I can plug in, and it's a high-end gaming PC, and it, you know, works as well as my Xbox or my PlayStation as like a native gaming device on television, and then I could use my Steam Deck to, oh, okay, like, you know, like in your use case, right? Oh, I fucked off work early. I'm playing on my Steam box for a little bit. Oh, Macaulay's home? Cool. Jump over on the Steam Deck, and like your save is just there because it's the cloud, and Steam's cloud saves are so good, right? And like very seamless. Yeah, like that would be cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
be delivering on the promise
honestly,
of what we were talking about with the wanting to play the Xbox and PlayStation games on cross save.
Yes, yeah, I know. And more people need to implement cross save, but I feel like that's the next step for them.
Yeah,
It's you give me something else to buy because I will probably buy it if they put something like that out.
You know, I'm in now. They got me. I'm back in. I'm back in the Steam ecosystem. I flirted with being a PC gamer in like 2006, 2018 in that era, and then I eventually fell off. And
Yeah, I remember when we were at Loot Pots, you were like, I'm building a PC, and you got like that RAM that was DOA, and DJ came around and like helped you. And like you built this whole new
That wasn't
rig,
even my first gaming rig though. That was my third rig.
And like I don't feel like you ever really played games on it.
No, I mean I use it for production though. That's the thing, right? Is like I wanted it to be a gaming capable rig, but the real reason I'm doing that is because I want it to be able to export YouTube videos really quickly. I want it to stream well, right? And like you'll notice I never have the technical issues that you have while streaming. And part of that is that my internet's better, but part of it is also that
you know, my technical issue yesterday was because Twitch's servers just went bang. So I don't
I'm not blaming you for that one. But I mean, you know, you have the frame dips and issues like that and stuff. Yeah. My computer handles all that really well, you know, and like that was my benchmark was I wanted to be able to, you know, use it as a high quality production machine more than anything. But I have a gaming laptop too. My laptop is a pretty high end gaming machine, but again, I don't use it for that. Or at least I rarely do. Sometimes I'm like I played like League of Legends on that a little bit, but not much else. That's the thing, right? It's like I work on computers all day, and then one of my main things when I'm not working is this with you, and I'm on a computer for hours. I've been at this desk on this computer for fucking 10 hours today already. I'm done, right? Like, and we're gonna be on for another 2 after this.
We got stream to go,
right? So you know, by the time I'm done, I'll have been here for like 12 hours, you know, and like the last thing I want to do is like, time to relax. Let me sit in this same fucking room and play on my. Like, I don't want to do that. You know, it's never been great for me. And the time in which I was an active PC gamer, it was because I was living with my father, right? And I had 2 rooms that I had access to. I had a bedroom, and then I had an office space that I used as like also my primary hangout point. So like, it was normal for me to be like, I'm done with work for the day. Now I'm going to go sit on the couch and play a game on my PS4 or whatever. So like the idea of being like, oh, I'll stay on the computer in the room I'm hanging out in anyway was like,
no, yeah, you don't want to do that now.
No. Now I'm down here in the basement all day, you know? And it's like, I don't want that. I want to be upstairs with my nice TV, with my fiance, with my cats hanging out, you know, like, so.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And, you know, the Steam that makes that possible. One thing I want you to test, I'm going to give you some more homework because you haven't done the Chiaki homework yet.
That's good. I haven't done the last homework you gave me, so give me more.
Well, it's related. Steam Link.
Okay.
I'd love to know how running a game on your PC performs with Steam Link to the Steam Deck.
Okay.
That's something that's possible.
That might work pretty well.
And compare that then to PS5 and Xbox. And we'll do that in a couple of weeks.
Okay. 2 weeks to do that. We'll see. I'll do my best. I am getting married in a few weeks, Stephen. I don't have a ton of time these days.
I'll be very upset if you're not done. That's all I ask.
Okay, all you ask of me. All right, sure. Well, anyway, if you guys want to let us know your thoughts on any of the stuff we discussed today, or you know, if you've tried our tutorial and you've gotten green light, or as of next week, I guess Chiaki working on your Steam Deck, what games are you playing? What's your experience been? Was it worthwhile? And yeah, if you know your thoughts on like the idea of a Steam box, what you want to do with the Steam Dock, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm very interested
And
to hear from folks in the community about this stuff.
I also want to know what your favorite community tool is that we've not, or a little app or whatever that we've not heard about that you use all the time.
Yeah.
Something like EMU Deck, something like Chiaki or Greenlight that we can then explore on the show, because I'd love to try more of these things. So
Steve needs more things to do, so hit him up.
I do, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So remember, if you want to find the rest of our content, if you want to go become a Patreon supporter, if you want to find us on Twitch, if you want to find us everywhere else on the web, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find all the ways you can get involved in the community, however you choose to do it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you'll come join the Discord right into the show. Check out some of our other podcasts. We got Nintendo Noise. We got Flipscreen Games. Whatever you choose, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thanks for listening to the Steam Deck Podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.